Hello everyone. Today we will introduce another department or another function of a business which is called marketing. And now marketing is quite an exciting portion of a business. This is where you're interacting with the consumers. This is where you're trying to convince them, trying to build a brand image. A lot of advertising and promotion comes into play. So a lot of things where you get to experiment with and try to innovate in order to get the attention of the consumers for the product you're making. So that's what we're going to look at throughout in the next few videos, what marketing does and what are the different tools that it has to perform the functions that it's asked to do. Now, as soon as I see the term marketing, I look at a word within that, and that word is clearly market, right? So before even trying to understand what the business does on the marketing side, let's just first try to get an understanding of what a market is. So market, which is basically most of the word marketing, market is a place where two kinds of people meet. One type are your consumers, as you can see with the like button, and the other are the producers. Okay? Another term that we can remember them by is these are your sellers, and consumers are your buyers. Now, any place where these two types of people meet, the buyers and the sellers, we call that a market or a marketplace. Now, I will point out here that because of technology and you understand now how the modern business world works, the market does not have to be a physical place. Yeah, it's supermarket or a store, that could be obviously a market, but because of internet and phones and the technology we have available, a lot of markets tend to be virtual or online. And think about examples of Amazon and AliExpress or Alibaba to just understand what that means, meaning when you go on to those websites, you are there as a buyer and there are other producers there selling their products. So even there, the market is created. So it doesn't have to be a face-to-face interaction. Now, whenever these two people meet, something happens. There's an exchange taking place. And that exchange is at first, the business will give something to the workers. And that something comes in the form of the products that they make. So the goods and services, what we've already discussed, phone, internet, education, all of those are products. In return for those products, the consumers are providing the producers with money, right? That's what they're in it for, profit. So consumers play their role by giving the money that will eventually become profit for the business. So that's the exchange that's taking place. Goods are given or services are given, and in return, money is exchanged. Now, before these two parties, the consumers or the producers, decide to enter the market, they have to determine something for themselves. And I want to discuss that first through the consumer's perspective. Now, let's say, think about yourself. You want to buy a cell phone. Okay? Now, first of all, you've got to show a willingness to buy. Okay? That might come out of need, that might come out of peer pressure, it could be something that you want. So when I say willingness, I mean that this could be either something that you need or something that you want. So your needs and wants, that creates the willingness for something. And at the same time, you must also have the ability to buy. And obviously that comes in the form of money in your pocket, access to it, things like that. So together, if a consumer has the willingness and the ability to buy a product, we call that the demand from the consumer. Okay, remember this term, we'll discuss this a little bit more later on. So willingness and ability, once the consumer shows that, that means they are demanding something. When we look at the producers and think about the same process, they also have to show the willingness. And now, how would they show their willingness to buy something? This will come in the form of, obviously, demand from the consumers. How will they figure that out? Through research. And we will discuss that in another video soon. So they've got to show the willingness that, yeah, we want to make it because people are asking for it. But that's not enough. You also need to show that you have the ability to buy it. Meaning, you will remember our resources, land, labor, capital. If you have all of those, you would be able to produce it. So ability comes from that. Together, once a producer shows that they have the willingness and the ability to produce something, we call that supply. Okay, so what producers are bringing to the market is a willingness to supply, and what the consumers are bringing is a willingness to buy, or demand rather. Okay, so that's what a market is, and this is where the marketing department operates, understanding what the consumers want and making sure that those products are available exactly how the consumers demanded, so that this money keeps coming in on and on and on. That is what marketing is. So now let's get a little bit deeper into what a market is, and starting with first understanding the consumer side of it, which we discussed as demand. Now what is demand? It's the quantity of product that consumers demand at a given price. And I will highlight a couple of words here: demand and price, because they seem to be fundamental to the whole definition. And I want to discuss the relationship that these two concepts have when it comes to the marketing department. Whenever, and think about this logically, think about, yourself, your own thinking. Whenever we see that price of something going up, immediately our response is going to be, we should demand less of it. Obviously I'm assuming you are at the same level of income. Conversely, if the price of something goes down, you can buy more of it, so you won't want more. This tells us that price and demand have an inverse relationship. When price goes up, quantity goes down. When price goes down, quantity goes up. And that's what helps us to understand and plot the demand curve. Here, demand curve, you'll see here, we see the price on the y-axis, quantity demanded on the x-axis, and I'll just put in a few random numbers there. Now let's assume that at the price of $20, 15 people buy this product. And I'm going to show that by plotting a little dot right here. Now, assuming that the price goes down to 10, you would expect that more people would want to buy it. And let's assume that that number is 45 here. So I'm going to put a dot right here. This gives me 2 points. And once I connect these two dots, I get a downward sloping demand curve. Okay? This is simply showing that when price is higher, fewer people buy it. When price is lower, more people will end up buying it. So demand curve will always be a downward sloping curve. Now, we can understand that price and demand have a direct relationship, but there are other factors that will also determine the demand for a product. And those are, obviously, price is primary. That's part of the definition. We can't forget that. But also things such as income. If you certainly have more income, you've hit a lottery, and good luck to you. But if you have more income, you'll buy more things. So that doesn't, you're not restricted monetarily, so that might increase the demand for something. Also, the taste for things change. Sometimes you like one thing, sometimes you like the other, so you might want to, like for example, food, you want to try different things. So demand of food in restaurants fluctuate quite a bit. Also, the level of competition that you are operating with. So with more competition, you'll have more challenges. With fewer, you will know that the demand for your product will be much higher. Advertising has a huge role to play, and we will discuss this in more detail when we talk about marketing mix, where advertising is one of the main ways to get consumers to buy a product. Now, at this point, I will also say that please do not assume that marketing is all about advertising. Advertising is one part of it, but there's so much more to it, which we will look at later on. And finally, another factor is the government rules and regulation and the laws that they create will sometimes restrict or expand the amount of product you can sell to consumers. So many factors that determine from the consumer's end why they would want to buy more or less of some things. But just remember that the price and quantity demanded have an inverse relationship, which would show us a downward sloping demand curve, just like so. Now, on the other hand, supply is what the producers bring to the market, and supply is the amount of product that producers offer for sale at a given price. And I will highlight a couple of words again here. Offer for sale and price. So offer for sale, I will treat as supply. Yes, that was a mistake. I should have written supply there so I can connect it to this supply here, but you get it, right? So whenever I talk about supply, it's a direct relationship with price. And we've got to understand that first before getting any further. Now, what I want you to do at this point is take off your consumer hats and put on your business hats and think about this from a business's perspective. Okay? Now, as a business, when you see the price of whatever your product is increasing, you'd want to capitalize on that because a higher price means that you can make a higher profit from the same product. So at that point, you'd want to supply more. Now, again, here I'm assuming that the costs for production remain the same. The inverse is also true, which says that if price goes down, which means your profit margin on each product has gone down, you will be making less money out of it. You may want to produce less of that product. Okay? And that shows that there is a direct relationship between price and supply. And similar to how we use this graph to show a demand curve, we will use this to also plot a supply curve. Now again, same random number there. We know that when price goes up, quantity supplied goes up as well. So starting point, let's take that to be at $10, you are making 15 units. So I'm going to put a dot right here, dot, dot, dot. When you see the price of your product increase, all the producers would want to produce a higher amount because that means they can make more profit on more number of products. That means I will have another point at $20.45, something around here. Now, if I make a straight line, whenever I have 2 points, I can draw a straight line just like that. And that gives me an upward sloping supply curve showing that supply and price have a direct relationship. When one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down the same way. That is the supply curve. Now, yes, clearly price is a factor, but there are other factors that help a business to determine whether they should produce more or less. First, production cost. Okay, now what it costs you to make is a big factor in how much you can produce. Because remember that you always have a limited or scarce amount of resources, which includes your money and your land and your labor. So there's only so much you can produce with what you can afford at this point. If you want to increase the amount of production, then you also have to increase your spending on these resources. And that's where the production cost will start going up. So if you need more land, you will have to pay more rent. If you need more labor, more wages, more capital, interest. So if costs start going up with your supply level, then you also have to find a way to manage that somehow. Also government policies, like for example, you can import X number of cars or X type of cars and things like that. And that's because of government policies. And in some cases, government supports some businesses through grants and subsidies and help for export, which encourages them to supply more. Technology. Clearly, like think about Food Panda, right? The piece of technology transformed the restaurant industry. They are not just restricted to serving people in their premises. They can send the food to people's homes. That increases their amount of supply by 10 folds, 20 folds in some cases. So technology will also be useful. And also weather, right? This is probably more true in agriculture. With good weather, you get bigger produce. With bad weather, you get not so good in terms of your output from crops. So weather will also determine how much more or less you can supply. So we've looked at both sides now, right? There's the demand side, there's the supply side. And now we've got to combine those two to figure out how the market is operating. We've already seen the supply and the demand curves individually, but when you put them together on the same graph, they will intersect at a point. And this is an important point, and this point is called the equilibrium. Yeah? This point tells us two things. Tells us what's the price at which the producer is willing to sell and the consumer willing to buy it, and in terms of quantity what the producers have decided to produce and what the consumers have demanded to buy. So this is where it said that the market is in balance. The exact amount that is demanded by the consumers at a price that they're willing to spend is the exact amount that the producers are willing to produce at an acceptable price of their product. That is how a market works with the two ends, the demand and the supply. And the marketing department is then tasked with increasing the demand for their product as quickly as possible so that they have a better chance to make more money by producing more output.